When I married Ethan, I felt like I was stepping into a life I had only ever dreamed of. I had grown up with modest means, always having just enough to get by. So when Ethan's wealth entered my life, it was like stepping into a new world, one where the smallest decisions seemed to have been made for me. Our home is a sprawling estate on the outskirts of the city, nestled in a neighborhood where every house seems to shine with perfection. I never wanted for anything. The closets are filled with designer clothes, and the fridge is stocked with fresh produce from the best organic markets. Ethan provided everything, and I mean everything I could ever need. I didn't even have to think about how to make ends meet. I remember one of our first mornings together as a married couple. Ethan had left for work, and I walked through the house in a daze. The light streamed through the windows, illuminating rooms that were filled with expensive furniture and modern art. At that moment I realized I had everything, yet something was missing. I couldn't put my finger on it. I should have felt blissful, right? After all, isn't this what every woman would dream of? But there was a quiet emptiness that I couldn't ignore. I tried to push the feeling aside. I would spend my days going to the gym, planning dinners, or meeting friends for lunch. But the days started to blend together, and I began to feel like I was just drifting through life. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate the comforts. I did more than I could say. But with every passing day, I couldn't shake the growing sense that I was more than just a wife in a beautiful house. There were mornings, especially after Ethan left for work, when I would sit by the window with a cup of coffee, staring out at the life I had built. And yet deep inside I felt lost. I had always envisioned a life where I could pursue my passions, maybe even build a career of my own. But in this world, where every bill was paid for and every need was met without a second thought, I found myself questioning my place. The luxury of being a stay-at-home wife came with its own set of unspoken rules. No one told me how strange it would feel to not have a clear purpose outside of the home. No one mentioned that, at some point, the clothes, the cars, the vacations, and the freedom to do whatever I wanted might start to feel hollow. It's a kind of privilege I wasn't prepared for, and maybe it was naive to think that it would be enough. I tried not to let these feelings consume me. After all, who would? Who would dare to feel unfulfilled when everything was so perfect on the surface? But the question lingered. What about me? What about my own ambitions, my own desires to create something meaningful outside of my marriage? I began to realize that while I had all the material wealth I could ever want, there was something missing, a piece of myself that I didn't know how to find. And so, I started to wonder, was this really all there was? Ethan's wealth was a blessing in many ways. It granted us a life of comfort that most could only dream of. But as I spent more time in this gilded cage, I began to feel the weight of something else, the subtle but ever-present pressure of his success. From the outside, our marriage seemed flawless. He was the powerful CEO of a prestigious company, always in control, always decisive. I admired his ambition, his drive, the way he carried himself in every room. But with his success came a sense of expectation, and I quickly realized that I was expected to play a role in his world, a role that didn't include anything outside of what he provided. Ethan never outright discouraged me from working. But his words, his looks, and his behavior spoke volumes. I started to notice the little things, the way he would talk about my potential career in passing, almost as though it were an afterthought. "It's so great that you have so much time for yourself," he'd say, his voice warm but distant. "Most people are stuck in offices all day." At first I didn't think much of it. I appreciated his concern. He was giving me the freedom I never had before. But as the weeks turned into months, and the months into years, I began to sense a pattern. His casual comments weren't just about convenience or comfort. They were subtly steering me away from any thoughts of a career. When I mentioned taking a business class to explore my interests, Ethan laughed it off as though I were joking. "You've got everything you need here," he said. "Why bother with all that stress?" The way he said it made me feel small, like the idea of me working was something that didn't belong in our life. At first I tried to rationalize it. I convinced myself that maybe he just wanted to take care of me. After all, wasn't that what every husband would want? But over time, the reality of our situation started to settle in. I was becoming more and more financially dependent on him. And in a marriage where wealth dictated the rules, I began to feel like I was losing control over my own life. There were moments when I tried to assert myself. I would talk to Ethan about my dreams, about the things I wanted to accomplish outside of our marriage. But no matter how much I spoke, it always felt like he wasn't really listening. His responses were filled with well-meaning advice, but it was clear that he didn't think I needed to work. His belief in his ability to provide for me, to take care of everything, was suffocating. And yet, there was a part of me that feared it, feared the idea of becoming financially dependent on him. I had spent my whole life believing that independence was the key to my worth. But now, in a marriage that was supposed to be a partnership, I felt like I had lost my sense of self. The power imbalance was subtle, but it was there. Ethan's wealth, his control over our finances, and his expectations of my role in our marriage created an unspoken dynamic. I wanted to be his equal, to stand alongside him in more than just name. But it seemed that my place was set. I was the supportive wife, the one who stayed behind the scenes, the one who took care of everything at home. And as much as I loved him, as grateful as I was for the life he provided, I couldn't help but wonder, what about me? What about my own aspirations, my own desires to build something on my own? Was I just supposed to live in the shadow of his success forever? I didn't know how to voice these feelings without sounding ungrateful. I didn't know how to explain that, despite the wealth, despite the luxury, there was a part of me that felt stifled, like I was being suffocated by the very thing that was supposed to give me freedom. I could no longer ignore the gnawing feeling deep inside me, the desire to do something of my own, to create something that was truly mine. I wanted to prove that I wasn't just a reflection of Ethan's success, that I could stand on my own 2 feet and build a future outside the carefully constructed life we had built together. I spent hours thinking about it. What could I do? What were my passions? My skills? Over the years I had developed a love for design, not just the aesthetic of it, but the entire process of creating something from nothing. I would sketch ideas in notebooks, but they were always tucked away, hidden under the weight of daily life. Began to take small steps. I researched online, read articles, watched tutorials. It wasn't much, but it was something. A spark of hope, a glimpse of the future I could have if I dared to step outside of this gilded cage. I dreamed of opening my own design studio, of collaborating with clients, of building something real, something that was mine, not just a pretty hobby. But every time I thought about sharing this with Ethan, a wall seemed to go up. I knew he wouldn't understand. I could already hear his voice in my head, trying to talk me out of it. "You're doing fine, why take on the stress?" The more I thought about it, the more I realized how trapped I felt. The truth was, Ethan didn't see the need for me to pursue a career. In his eyes, I had everything I could possibly need. I didn't need to work. And for a while I tried to convince myself that he was right, that I should be content, that I should feel fulfilled in this life we had built. But every day it became harder and harder to ignore the emptiness I felt inside. I needed to be more than just a wife. I wanted to feel like I mattered for who I was, not just for the fact that I was married to a successful man. I wanted to contribute something meaningful to the world, to prove to myself that I was capable of more than just being a passive participant in my own life. But as much as I wanted this, the emotional toll began to weigh on me. It wasn't just about the career I dreamed of. It was about how Ethan's lack of understanding made me feel. There were times when I wondered if he would even support me if I truly decided to pursue this path. And it wasn't just about the fear of his disapproval. It was about my own fear. The fear of stepping out on my own and finding out that I wasn't enough. What if I failed? What if my dreams were just that? Dreams that could never be realized. The fear of losing my security, my identity, and my place in our marriage was overwhelming. But no matter how much I tried to push it away, my desire for fulfillment didn't go away. It burned inside me, refusing to be ignored. I had spent years putting Ethan's dreams and success first, but now it was time for me to think about mine. And as terrifying as it was, I knew I had to take that first step, even if it meant challenging everything I had known about myself and about our marriage. As the days passed, I found myself trapped in a tug-of-war between my desires and the reality of my marriage. Ethan's wealth had given us a life of comfort, but it had also created a web of expectations. Expectations that I wasn't sure how to escape from. On the surface, everything was perfect, but beneath it all, there was a constant feeling that something was out of place. In the grand scheme of things, I had it all. The house, the car, the vacations to places I'd only seen in magazines. People envied me, and I could see it in their eyes whenever I attended a social event with Ethan. They would glance at me with a mixture of awe and curiosity, wondering how someone like me had ended up with someone like him. I should have felt grateful. I did feel grateful. But it was as if the more I had, the more I began to lose myself. What made it harder was the judgment that came from both sides, those who envied my life and those who criticized me for not contributing to it. I was constantly caught in the middle, torn between two worlds that didn't quite understand me. The women I met at charity events and social gatherings often saw my life as a fairy tale. They envied my ability to live without worry, to wear expensive dresses, and to attend galas at a moment's notice. They couldn't imagine the struggles I faced behind closed doors, the internal battle of wanting something more and feeling guilty for wanting it. How could I complain when everything on the outside looked perfect? But then there were the others, those who looked down on me, as if my life of luxury somehow made me less than them. "You don't work, do you?" they would ask, their tone dripping with judgment. "Must be nice to just stay home all day." It wasn't always said with malice, but it felt like a slap in the face every time. The implication was clear. I wasn't contributing to society, to the world. I was just a passive observer in a world I didn't deserve. The pressure to meet both these expectations, to live up to the image of the perfect wife while also justifying my place in this world, was exhausting. I wasn't sure where I belonged anymore. Did I have a right to be proud of the life I had, even if it was built on someone else's success? Or was I simply playing a role, a pawn in a game I didn't fully understand? I began to feel like I was suffocating in this life of excess. On the outside it seemed like everything was perfect, but on the inside I was falling apart. I wanted to build something of my own, something that wasn't dictated by the wealth Ethan had brought into our marriage. I didn't want to feel like I was just his accessory, his trophy wife. I wanted to matter in my own right. But the truth was, navigating wealth was complicated. It wasn't just about feeling unfulfilled. It was about the judgments and expectations that came with being part of this world. It was about the quiet pressure to stay in my lane, to be content with my role as the supportive wife who looked good on his arm. There was no easy way to navigate the complexities of our life. And every time I thought I had figured it out, I found myself questioning whether I was doing the right thing. Should I just accept the life Ethan had given me, the life that so many people would have killed for? Or should I continue to fight for my independence, for the chance to create something meaningful on my own? After months of internal turmoil and sleepless nights, I realized something crucial. I had the power to change my life, to create a future for myself, regardless of Ethan's wealth or the expectations placed on me. For so long I had allowed myself to be defined by my role in his life, by the image of the perfect wife, the one who lived in the shadow of his success. But now I understood that I wasn't just someone's wife. I was a person in my own right, with my own dreams, ambitions, and desires. I had spent too long asking for permission to live my own life, waiting for Ethan to approve my every move. But it became clear that if I wanted to be truly happy, I had to stop waiting. I had to take ownership of my future. I no longer wanted to be defined by the wealth that came into our marriage or by the judgment of others. I wanted to be me, someone who could stand on her own 2 feet, someone who could contribute to the world in a way that was meaningful to me. I took a deep breath and decided to share my feelings with Ethan. I knew this conversation wouldn't be easy. After all, we had built our life together on the foundation of his success, and this would mean challenging the very thing that had brought us together. But I had to be honest, not just with him but with myself. When I spoke to him, I chose my words carefully, explaining how I had been feeling for so long. I told him about my desire to pursue my own career, to explore my passions and build something outside of our marriage. For the first time in a long while, I felt the weight of his gaze. I wasn't sure what he was thinking, but I could feel the tension in the air. Ethan listened quietly, his face unreadable. When I finished speaking, there was a long pause. My heart raced, but I stood my ground, determined to be true to myself. "I never meant to hold you back," he finally said, his voice softer than I had expected. "I just wanted you to be happy. But I see now that you need more than just what I can give you." His words were a relief, but they didn't take away the fear I still felt. I knew this was just the beginning of a long journey, a journey toward rediscovering who I was outside of my role as his wife. But for the first time I felt like I had his support. And that made all the difference. From that moment on, I began to carve out my own path. I enrolled in design courses, started working on my portfolio, and took small steps toward building the career I had always dreamed of. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I doubted myself. But with each step forward, I felt more empowered, more confident in my ability to create my own future. Over time, I learned that finding personal fulfillment and financial independence wasn't just about leaving behind my role as a stay-at-home wife. It was about understanding that I had the right to pursue my own happiness, to create a life that was mine, not defined by anyone else's expectations. And as I moved forward, I realized that it wasn't just about having a career or earning money. It was about reclaiming my voice, my sense of purpose, and my ability to shape my own destiny. I didn't need Ethan's wealth or anyone's approval to be whole. I just needed to believe in myself. I wanted to share this story with anyone who might be feeling trapped in a similar situation. Anyone who feels like their dreams are being stifled by the expectations of others, or by the wealth and power that seem to define their lives. It's never too late to find your own path, to create a future that is truly yours. Your dreams matter. You matter. And you are capable of achieving whatever you set your heart to.